Welcome to Resilience Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Ostrolenk. This show is about building better humans, institutions, and systems. On the show, I'll be interviewing many different experts from across many different fields, including human optimization, health and fitness, team building, mind-body medicine. In the institutional space, we're looking at different institutions and how we can create new ones, new models and maps, including in medicine, in education, in intelligence community, in law enforcement, in the military, especially in the special operations community. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show. Today's guest is returning for the third time, and every time he comes on, the conversation delivers powerful lessons in resilience, leadership, endurance, and the mindset required to operate under pressure. Don Mann is a retired Navy SEAL Team 6 operator, New York Times bestselling author, elite endurance athlete, motivational speaker, and one of the toughest men you'll ever meet. Over the course of his life, he has completed more than 1,000 endurance events around the world and built a reputation for pushing beyond perceived human limits. His newest book, The Navy SEAL Playbook, brings the principles forged inside one of the world's most elite military units into everyday life: discipline, mental toughness, leadership, mission focus, and performing when conditions get hard. What makes Don so compelling is not just what he's accomplished, the way he thinks about adversity, suffering, purpose, and personal responsibility. Please welcome back to the podcast, Don Mann.
Michael, it's great to be back here with you. You look fantastic.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. We're talking offline, and literally, it's been probably a decade that I've had you on the podcast. But great to see you, and congratulations on your new book.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah. So, since you've been on before, we don't necessarily have to go into the depth of your past, but there might be a few new listening members of the audience. So besides what I read, what would you like people to know about who Don Mann is before we jump into your book and some of the amazing things you've been working on recently?
Well, thanks for that. I've just, I feel like my whole life's just gone toward one direction. And I love pushing myself, but I love pushing others too, mainly because I think it's something you can do for someone else that's helpful for someone else. And jokingly, my business, our logo was "Your pain is my pleasure." So I don't really do it for that reason, but I do believe that if you don't push yourself beyond a perceived boundaries that you might have for yourself, you stay in this little bubble and you can't grow and you can't expand. And to me, that's not living. And it's just a little bit of pain or discomfort you're going to get when you come out of that little bubble and push beyond your self-perceived limits. I believe that wholeheartedly, and I believe that for everybody.
Well, I think that's your ethos. That's the way you literally live your life. Having watch you do all the things that you do. Question for you, 'cause, you've been in this space for an awful long time. Not to call you old or anything like that, but you're a seasoned man. What have you seen changing in our culture over time? Because, everything you just shared with me, I was like, yes, we need more of that, but we need more of that because we have so little of that seemingly in our culture as time goes on. Have you seen something similar? And what's your diagnosis of what you see, and how might we change course, if you put it that way, if you're okay with putting it that way?
I do see it for sure. And I believe I noticed it when I first got out of the SEAL teams. I got out and I did 21 years with the military, SEAL Team 1, SEAL Team 2, SEAL Team 6, then 25 years with the CIA. And then my sport was extreme sport. So it's always around like hardcore people. But I did notice when I retired from the Navy and I looked around, the people I was surrounded by, communities, the people you live with in the community, you're just around away from the SEAL community. I realized like right away that, instead of setting high goals and reaching them or going after them at least, I saw a lot of people set low goals. They reach them, they go home and they were happy with themselves. And I see that more and more and more all the time. And I'm working on this project now, and it has a lot to do with the greatest generation, my father's generation. And they went through, they went through World War II, they went through the Great Depression, and so they went with a lot of hardships and not wasting and knowing they had to work hard. And then the Great Depression comes, and then boom, they're called to war. and they go and they fight, the worst war this world has ever seen, and they're gone for basically 4 or 5 years, and they came home, nobody complained, they went right to work with very, very little, and they never complained. Take that compared to today, it's a whole different world. I see so many young people who just like and older people too, hanging out on a couch and being on a computer or a laptop or a phone, and they don't have a lot of ambition. And even I do these little 10K races and things on weekends now.
Easy day.
Yeah, and then to see the times even relative, to do well in a race today, the times you get today would have put you way in back of the pack 10, 20 years ago. Now they're up at the top of the pack. Everything's easier. And for mankind, it's bad. I think it's bad for our country. And people aren't going to get ahead. And I think we're going to slide backwards as a country because of that.
I've seen, for instance, the military is having a hard time recruiting people who are healthy enough to actually do what they need to do inside the military itself, whether it's psychiatric or psychological challenges or physical health challenges. It seems like a declination of just what we're capable of doing. Do you have an idea why we've gotten, so weak physically and mentally and emotionally?
Well, I do know it's the last I think I heard it was over 35% of the youth who try to get in the military are obese, overweight, obese, and they can't get in physically. The school standards, what used to be a 12th grade education is equivalent to maybe an 8th grade education, what we had. And so they're not getting the education. The school system's not as great. The physical fitness is gone, and being I don't want to be rude or anything, but being fat and overweight, it's almost the norm now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we were kids, there weren't fat people around. Everybody was outside doing something.
Yeah, maybe an outlier, someone like, but it was very rare.
Yeah.
And speaking of the physical conditions, I'm just reminded when we were in school, and I'm a little younger than you, but I'm sure you went through the same thing. We had those tests, the presidential physical fitness test. You had to climb the rope and do pull-ups and do the runs. Do they even have that anymore?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the people I talk to with kids, some of them, the gym class is optional, which just blows me away. Gym class optional. And then the physical fitness test in the military is getting easier.
Is it really?
The Air Force is a little bit different than the Navy and the Army and the Marines, but they're just not what they used to be. And I think what happens is because you're not getting enough people to pass the standards, you bring the standards down and you bring the standards down instead of raising the standards, trying to get more quality people. I'm worried, and I think about it all the time for my kids, my grandkids, but also for our country, because I don't see how our country can do what it's done with the mentality we have now in our younger people.
The way I think about it is we're kind of living off borrowed time, borrowed energy from the previous generation.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, which
I
is
agree.
very unfortunate. Yeah. So your new book is a possible antidote for that, the Navy SEAL book. Why this book now?
Well, it actually wasn't even my idea to write that book. The publisher who I've worked with before, he asked me if I'd be interested in writing it. And when he asked me, I was thinking, well, it's perfect timing. It's perfect timing because I was working at some banks associations, Minnesota, Texas, uh, different states, and they had reached out to the Navy Commodore, asking, what can we take from the Navy SEAL community and bring it to the bank community that might help us?
Wow, that's a
And yeah, and other businesses have done it too. So this guy who was the Commodore of the West Coast, most senior leadership position in the SEAL teams in the West Coast, he came up with it. It's a great program. And one of the things he did was he created a whole syllabus of things that we can take from the Navy SEAL community and share that weren't classified. It didn't go against tactics, techniques, procedures, or anything like that. And he put it together, and then he retired. and then I came in and took his place when he retired.
Okay.
Yep. And then the lessons were, I was shocked really to hear that the lessons we were putting forth to the bankers, it was new to them. I just assumed everybody knew these things, uh, but they didn't. And then I was asked to do some talks, for a company in Norway, some other places on, hey, can you share the SEAL ethos on what we can take to bring for our company and maybe make our company stronger? And so when the publisher asked me if I'd write that book, I said, absolutely. I've been working on the project through talks and leadership programs for a number of years now. I'm ready to write the book. And it really a lot of it comes down to the leadership, setting an example, setting a legacy, being a mentor, pushing yourself out of the comfort zone, not being afraid to make mistakes and encourage your people to make mistakes because you don't really learn if you do everything right all the time. But if you, as you know, of course, better than anybody, but when you allow your folks to make mistakes, you talk about it, and then you correct it from that point on. In the SEAL community, we call that standard operating procedures that are written. So,
Mhm.
for instance, if you're fast roping out of a helicopter, say you're rappelling out of a helicopter, and you go to rappel and break and take the rope behind your back, but you have a knife that slips out of the scabbard and that rope gets cut. And this is an example of what happened. And the person falls and gets really badly hurt. So the SOP was, how can we fix that? Okay, from now on, whoever breaks on the right side, the knife goes on the left side, as an example. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
somebody gets hurt or somebody gets killed, we go to the drawing board, we write a setup of standard operating procedures, and that puts forward into motion from that point on. And so we always did this and we learned from our mistakes. And if the mistakes were in in the military community, as you know, in the military, if you make a mistake, it could cost your life, cost other lives. But the same ethos works in banking or any other community. If you make a mistake in a procedure or administrative matter and it costs time or money or, cause problems in people's lives, let's bring this down. Let's make a SOP and let's do it this way from now on. Why make the same mistake over and over?
I would imagine though that requires a good bit of self-reflection, team reflection, honesty, and open communication, which is not the norm for the corporate world from my understanding of it. Yeah. How do you do that? Like,
Boy, that communication piece. I mean, I've heard so many leaders in the military say, the job's not that bad. It's fairly easy. It's communicating and working with a team that's the hard part. And it's when the communication breaks down, the team breaks down. And some of the leaders I look up to, like for instance, SEAL Team 6, they usually have the commanding officer, which you call a ring knocker, somebody who's been through Naval Academy and very high pedigree and just does everything right and goes to the academy and gets, you know, promoted above his peers. And before you know it, you're a commanding officer at SEAL Team 6. But there was a guy who was in blue team with us, and he was just one of the guys, just a great guy. He was an officer, but he was enlisted prior to, and so he didn't go to the academy. And he was just one of the guys. He's always at work first. He's always there last. He was always helping people. He never took care of himself. He always took care of other people, and so we all took care of him.
nice.
And he uh he was just a guy you wanted to be around. There was a day doing a jump and he broke his leg. Um, the bone in his leg went into the dirt and he got a bad infection. And so he had to miss a lot of work. He had to go to the hospital all the time, take care of this infection. And he was getting fed up because he was missing work. Finally, he said, just take it off, take it off. So he had his leg cut off, amputated, and he had a leg built for swimming, one for running, one for work. And he really cut into prosthetic legs. And he said, when I retire, I'm going to make prosthetic legs for other veterans. But, anyways, he rose up to the rank of commanding officer at SEAL Team 6. And he was there when bin Laden was taken out. So he had some of the toughest years. And he was who I look up to the most of almost any leader I've ever had was him, because when you worked around him, he'd sit around the table and he'd say, guys, what do you want to do? I need your help. he made everybody feel like they were part of the team and that he wasn't above anybody. He was one of the guys, and he wanted to, because of his team, get this mission accomplished. And so I look at people like that, people who communicate, they talk to everybody, there's no communication error. In the book, one of the things I put is after a briefing or after a meeting, to go ahead and ask around the table, Jimmy, could you reiterate what I just said to make sure I said it right? And make sure everything is understood. And if everyone understands the mission, everyone understands the orders, and everyone understands what they have to do, and they're doing it as a team, and they're doing it for mission success, and you know the leader is there for the team, it's like a perfect recipe for success.
How do you imprint that kind of mindset in leaders so they can? I mean, maybe they're not going to show up as fully as that as the guy you look up to, but like obviously you want to inculcate some of that way of being in the world, and then behaviors that follow the ways of being in the world. How do you train that in the leaders that you teach and train?
In the military, it's probably a little easier than civilian just because we have military training all the time, you know? But that's probably one of those examples that you can take from the military community and bring it to civilian community. Like, train the person you want to have take your place. You know,
Mhm.
train the person who's gonna take your place and have what we call sea daddies in the Navy, but have a mentor, have somebody you look up to. And like in my case, this person, John, said, what would John do in this situation? And and just have somebody you would like to emulate because of his leadership style.
Mhm.
And then the people who are poor leaders, they get booted out pretty quickly in the SEAL community. But those, what I really like to see is when there's a younger person, a younger enlisted person, even a younger officer, and just being around them, you feel their leadership and the way they act and the way they take the job so seriously and the way they put in extra effort. And you look at these people and say, wow, I want Dutch's. He's lower ranking, he's a younger guy. He speaks up. The senior people want to hear from him because his heart is 100% into it. And so it's not really the rank on your shoulders or anything. It's the person itself, the person, if they're willing to give it all to the mission and to the team, that is a leader, in my opinion. And that is a leader who's going to grow up and be a great leader at some point. And that person can influence the people above him too, or her. Yeah.
Well, you haven't been in the military, the SEAL team community, tier one, tier one operator, and then you also do hard physical challenges since retirement. I don't think you've ever really retired. Transition to new things. So I can see how physicality is a great tool for helping to shape individual leaders. You know, because you get to see what you're capable of, your limitations, you know, mental toughness, emotional resiliency, your capacity to work with other people under stressful situations. But I could imagine when you're working with a bank, you're not putting them under hard physical challenges. How do you help them develop some of those capacities besides seeing someone that you can emulate? That's awesome. But how do you, without having the hard physical things, how do you test their mettle and then train them up?
And you know, the hard physical things do help. And of course, most
Mhm.
organizations don't have that.
Yeah.
But it's really, really comforting to be pushing yourself really hard and seeing the boss right next to you. You know, that says a lot. But I know that's rare to have an organization that allows that to happen. But like for a bank, if I was a banker, for instance, as your question was, if there was a banker next to me and I was a banker and I saw maybe a more efficient way that person can be doing a certain administrative procedure,
Mhm.
I think the best way possibly to maybe help that person grow, maybe help that person be a better banker, maybe not to have bad feelings set into the room. Maybe I think the best way to do it is how would I want to be told that I can be a little bit better if I only tweaked this in this way? And I would say maybe, hey, Jimmy, you know, I noticed you do this in this way. I used to do it that way, or Mary used to do it that way. But then I've been doing it this way and it makes things smoother and faster. I mean, I just want to bring that out in case you wanted to think about it. Uh, so I think that goes back to the communication,
Yeah, yeah.
not to be the guy up here and talking to somebody down here. You're equals, and you want to talk to each other equally because you're all there for the team, and the team's all there for the mission. And
I would imagine some degree of self-regulation is an important aspect of this. It's one thing for tier one operators because you're unconsciously competent. You train all the time, so you just naturally do the thing. But in the corporate space, you're talking about not that you guys aren't human, but you're talking about regular humans who aren't
Mhm.
actually trained up to the same capacities. And self-regulation, I could imagine, is an important thing because they're not going to naturally operate at this higher level. Talk to me about self-regulation and managing emotional states and how they think about things.
Yeah, that might be one of the hardest parts, the emotional part, the self-regulation. I don't want to sound like broken record, but I still think if you're the self-regulation portion of how a person thinks and perceives things, if that person is able to not look at that person by itself, but that it's a segment of a team, and that person has to do everything for that team because it's the team that's important to create the mission success.
Got it.
And if I don't see how things can succeed if you're not thinking as a team,
Mhm.
because we're all part of some team, no matter what we do,
Yeah.
no matter what we're doing. But I think into if you're given your 40% or 50%, you've got to be put on the spot in some way that I mean, can I help you do that? Let me help you. I'm really, really bad at that. You can help me, but I think I can help you with that. But I think we want to try to achieve to give 100% to the job. Not everybody's like that, but there are ways everybody can be reached at some by some person somehow in some way to get more out of an individual if they don't give their 100% and they because they probably don't realize they're not giving it their all because they're
Mhm.
so used to setting goals low and reaching them.
Exactly.
I think and if the people next to them start setting the goals higher, higher, and higher, they're not gonna wanna be left behind, and they don't wanna be criticized or humiliated, and they could be assisted by the other teammates. We all have faults, we all have weaknesses, and we all have strengths, and, "Steve, I am so bad at that. Can you help me with this?" And, "Hey, if you need some help with that, I got some ideas for you," and
Perfect.
I think that works.
Yeah, it's really about kind of loosening the ego, engaging the person in honest, equal level conversations. Sounds like a lot of communication, a lot of checking the ego. Talking about principles, because I know that's an important part of your book. What are some of the principles you espouse in the book, but that you teach in the corporate space that you think are really important?
Okay, so for the principles is we talked about leadership, we talked about communications, breaking out of your boundaries.
That's your bread and butter, man.
It is. It is. But principles also allow your team members to make mistakes. They will learn. They will learn. And not to be harsh on them. And not because if someone's afraid to make mistakes, they're going to hold back. They won't give it their all. And from this mistakes is that's where we learn the most. What I like to tell younger folks, like if younger people ask, speaking principles or habits, if I'm asked, how do you become a SEAL or how do you become Delta Force or a Marine or, a mountain climber or something, I'd usually go on and on and on and have all these, yeah, I just babble on and come up with something. But now I have it down. And I thank one of the best triathletes in the world for helping me out with that. And his name was Dave Scott. And I was doing the Ironman with him in Hawaii. And before he won his first Ironman, I asked Dave Scott, I said, Dave, how do you stay in such great shape? He said, well, Don, I just don't take any time off. I work out every day. The doctors are against it.
Mm.
And so I realized a lot of people make excuses. There's always excuses. One of the principles is not to make excuses. And so I thought I would give that a shot for a year. So I went a year without a day off, no excuses. Biggest principle, no excuses. And then I tried another year. I went over 20 years without a day off, and it wasn't hard to do. I brush my teeth every day. I eat every day. I sleep every day, usually. And I work out every day. It's not that hard. So then I took Dave Scott's advice to me. And now when anybody asks me anything on how to become a SEAL or a Marine or something, say there's only four things you have to do, only four things. And these can be broken down into principles in any organization. For one, and we'll talk about SEALs right now. If you want to become a SEAL, every day get stronger. Every day, do something to make yourself stronger. Do more pull ups. If you did 21 pull ups today, do 22 tomorrow. Make yourself do 22. If you do 120 push ups, do 122. Uh, and you record it. Don't expect somebody to hand you a workout on a silver platter. You figure it out. But every day, do something to make yourself stronger. Every day, get up and do something to make yourself faster. So that could be sprints or hill workouts or track workouts or fartleks or sprints in the pool. But every day, get faster. If you could do 120 sit-ups in 2 minutes, do 122, for instance. And then more importantly, if it is the SEAL you want to be, every day do something to make yourself smarter and maybe learn what the early guys were doing back in World War II, putting obstacles and demolition on the obstacles, blowing them up so the ships can get into Normandy and see what they were doing in Korea and Vietnam and Somalia and Panama and the Iraq, Afghanistan, now in the 90 plus countries they're in, and learn to shoot and learn weapons and learn to skydive and go take a PADI course or an NAUI course and go learn to dive, but get smarter each and every day. And then number four, the most important thing, and this is a principle for sure I have in the book, is every day do something good for somebody. And that could be the man next door. If I look across the street and he's struggling carrying leaves to the garbage can, hey, Sarge, can I give you a hand? His name's Sarge, my neighbor, and just help him out. And because when I talk to 13, 14-year olds, I say, if you go to selection or if you go to buds, you just might be the strongest person there. You might be the fastest person. You might be the smartest, but you're going to be the person everybody wants on their team because all you do is good for people. And that's what people want. And if you're all for it, that's incredible. But if you took those four traits and you take it to some bankers or doctors or lawyers, whatever, they'll say, well, I don't have to be physically strong. I don't have to be physically fast, but you can just change that out. Okay. Be a stronger leader, you know,
Right.
be maybe not faster, but be more efficient at certain tasks. You would always get smarter at whatever you're doing and be a teammate that everybody wants on the team because you're so used to helping people.
I think in Japanese it's called Kaizen, 1% better every day, just a little bit of improvement.
That's nice. Yeah. That's
Oh,
nice.
yeah, I love those 4 principles because they apply anywhere for everyone. But you said something I kinda wanna unpack a little bit. The leader in a bank is like, "I don't need to be able to do push-ups or squats or," but I'm curious because 'cause you're very physically active, and I'd love for you to share a little bit in the near term, like some of the cool things you've done. But do you encourage people that you teach and train through this methodology that being healthier and more fit actually will benefit them in their workspace?
I do. And if they are resistant to the term stronger physically,
Mhm.
it could be a stronger brother or a stronger leader or a stronger banker, whatever. But I do notice, I give talks all around the country. But one thing I do notice is a lot of the CEOs are very fit. A lot of them are triathletes or runners, and they're very, very fit. And then that's kind of contagious, and the rest of the team sees their leader being fit, and that's contagious. Almost all the time, I see CEOs and leaders, the C-level, that I see him is very, very fit, and I do encourage that. It just you know how it is, it just makes you feel better, it
Mhm.
makes you healthier, it makes you happier, the endorphins are flowing, the chemicals are flowing, and, I can say if I go a day without workout, I just don't feel right, and we're human beings, we have to be active. We're not meant to sit behind a desk all day or sit on a couch all day. We're not meant for that.
what is your Kaizen? What do you do? Talk to me a little about your workout, your diet, nutrition. What are you doing to improve yourself a little bit every day?
Okay, so like for instance, today, well, I'll give you my example. I try to do a minimum of 10 hours outside every week. Some weeks it's 20 hours I get, but a minimum of 10. So today, before our interview today, I was out for an hour and a half bike ride, and it was a road ride. And then I'll be going to the gym tonight, this evening, for an hour workout. I, l- for me, 2.5 hours, an hour and a half cardio and something outside, and an hour indoors, Pilates or a gym or CrossFit or something, to me is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. But then, like when I travel, it's hard, but
Mhm.
sometimes I'll travel, and if it's only sports related, I'll get 25 hours of working out outdoors. And but I try to set a goal of 10 hours a week.
That's
And
great.
every day something has to be done. And if I can't get out because of work, I put on my computer, I put on a floor workout or Pilates workout on my computer, and I go in a room and go do an hour workout. Yeah.
Your like diet and nutrition looking like these days?
So my diet and nutrition, it used to be 90+% carbohydrates, when I was doing all the Ironmans and double Ironmans and ultra marathons. But now I try to keep it balanced. I try my best to stay away from sweets, although chocolate chip cookie I'll have every now and then, a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Those are my downfalls. Well, when I have them, it's very, very limited, but I do consider it a downfall. But I do pay attention to what I eat, and I try not to have processed foods or fried foods at all, and lean meats and things like that. Since last time we spoke, I got hurt on Mount Everest, and I was trying to climb Mount Everest, and I climbed about 30 mountains getting ready for it. And I was over 60 years old, and my team saying, "Wow, this isn't bothering you at all, is it?" I said, "No, I feel good. Knock on wood, I feel good." And we had such a strong team. Lydia Bradley was on the team, first woman to summit Everest without oxygen. And Anjay Dorje Sherpa was on the team, and he saved more lives than anybody up there. And he's like the hero of most climbing books. Into Thin Air, he's the hero.
Okay, yeah.
And we had such a great team. So a long story short is I developed what's called HAPE, high altitude pulmonary edema, and high altitude cerebral edema, where I was on the most dangerous part of Everest, where you're climbing the ladders on the ice fall. I started losing my memory, and I didn't know where I was. Then it got really dark because I lost my vision. And then my lungs filled with fluid. I was drowning in my own fluids. And when I put my head down, just fluids were coming out of my nose and mouth. So that was a pulmonary edema. The cerebral edema was the pressure pushing against my brain. So when I finally made it to the top, I collapsed. And I'm glad I made it to the top. And I opened up my eyes, and Anjay Dorje Sherpa, the most famous Sherpa in the world, and he saw a lot of people die from this, and he thought I was going to die. And he said, "Can you walk?" And I tried to get up, but I was just choking and coughing. My lungs just filled with fluid so fast. And I put my hand on his shoulders, and I had his oxygen mask on, and I collapsed a few times getting to this wall where we had to do 150, 200-foot rappel. And I couldn't really speak because I was coughing and choking so much, and nobody else was around. It was me and him, and the weather was bad. And he said, "Can you rappel?" And I felt like saying, "Of course I can rappel. I've rappelled all my life," but I couldn't really speak. I was just coughing and choking. So he rappelled down, and I had my harness on, my rappel device, and the rope was there. And I looked down, and it was dark. It was really daylight, but I lost my vision, so it looked like it was dark out. And I completely forgot how to rappel. But I remembered that morning or some morning, I saw a Sherpa wrap a rope around his arm a bunch of times, and he went down the wall, just releasing one loop off his arm at a time. Somehow I remembered that. I lost my memory. So I did that, and I had enough loops to make it down to the bottom by luck. And then I was put in a tent, just coughing and choking, trying to stay away from other people. And the doctor came in, and she shook her head, and she was letting everyone listen to my lungs because it sounded like a fish tank. Even without stethoscope, you could hear it. and she said, "You got to get off the mountain today." And then the helicopter couldn't make it in. So the next day, I was able to get on a helicopter, and so I had some rehab I had to go through that. But one of the greatest principles, Michael, I tell that long story because one of the greatest principles I think we need is goal set. And my old big thing is you and I talked about it years ago, but I always like having that macro goal. And for me, it was Everest. And my micro goals to reach the macro goal, I had to climb these other mountains. The hardest one being Denali in North America. That was harder than Everest, actually. But I just climbed all these other 30 mountains to try to reach that macro goal. And I didn't reach it. I didn't reach it because my body gave out, but I didn't quit trying. But now I, I didn't lose any enthusiasm at all. Winston Churchill said, "Success goes from going from one failure to another failure without losing enthusiasm." I just shifted gears, and I bought a bicycle. I had it built by a Tour de France rider who actually beat Lance Armstrong on one of the tours in one of the stages. And I'm trying to hit 60 miles an hour on that bicycle on a flat, and it's got a 90 tooth chainring. But the other thing is I've got some scar tissue in my lungs, so my lungs aren't the same. But to me, there's no way if I had a decision now, did I want to go through that experience or not go through it? I still would say yes, because besides the injuries I got, I didn't want to be the person for the rest of my life saying, I should have done this, I could have done that, I would have done that. At least I went for it and I tried. And I've got some scar tissue now. But now my macro goals are and I'm not as fast running or biking or swimming or paddling than I was before Everest. But now my goals are to try to beat those times I had before Everest. So it's another challenge and it keeps me going. And
Yeah.
so that principle is the macro goals. Set high goals, set a series of micro goals to reach it. Don't give up the dream and go for it. And if you don't make it for some reason, like I didn't summit, you just shift gears. Now I'm trying to hit 60 miles an hour on a bicycle, and I'm trying to reach the old goals I had in all those sports with the scar tissue. And it makes me very, very happy to have those goals.
Well, thank God you survived.
Thanks.
We can be having this conversation. Wow.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that that story I did not know.
Yeah, and there were some people who died up there, and you take a right at Green Boots when you see his body there, and there's a little 200 bodies up there that are frozen in place, and quite a few of them got the hape and the haze, and you just never know who's going to get it or when. But it was and since then I was asked to produce or host a TV show, so I'm producing and hosting 3 TV shows now, and
Jeez.
and they're called Surviving Man
Okay.
and Surviving Man All Stars, and the other one's Face Off. But they're pushing people in all realms of physical conditioning you can imagine. Actually, pushing people harder than I was training people to be SEALs, and
Wow.
we start out with a 10-part PRT, physical readiness test, which is harder than any physical readiness test in any of the services. And we capture them, we tie them up, we interrogate them, we have them do long desert navigation
So you're
underground. It's all military style training, and we have some of the best shooters in the world. We have all types of shooting instructors and instruction there. And so that's gone on for 5 years now, and it's doing real well, the shows.
where? Well, like, where can we find them? Watch them?
You
Fire
can,
them.
on all the, platforms, like Amazon and all those, but the best place I look at them is on YouTube.
Okay.
It's just Surviving Man, MANN, like my last name.
Yeah, yeah.
But I love doing that. It's nice seeing some people we get, just we try to break them all. We usually do. And then we have a mission at the end of every show. And this last one was so meaningful to me because we had 3 women who came and joined us. They're all martial arts, like world champions, but they're all also women who've been either abducted and taken for human trafficking purposes, sex trafficking, and they bounced back. So one of the girls was able to do 28 pull-ups, as sweet as can be, as nice as can be. The other one gave us a story. She said, "Well, I'm in my 40s now. I'm just getting my life back because my mother used to make me prostitute myself since I was 8." And so being around people with these hardcore lifestyles that they've had to grow up in and seeing them bounce back, talk about, contagious. You look at this person like, look at that life they have. And now look what they're doing. And it makes you feel like you haven't done anything in this world because what they just finished doing, now I've got to put out and do more. And then, some of the co-hosts I've had, Ken Shamrock, the most dangerous man in the world. What a great guy. He's a big MMA fighter, one of the early champs. And his story, he's about the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. And he would say, yeah, my father dropped me off. My father left. My mother dropped me off in an orphanage when I was a little boy. I went from reform school to reform school to reform school. The orphanage, who took me, it was a Shamrock orphanage, so I took his last name. I spent time in jail, but he helped me become an athlete after a while, and then he helped me become a wrestler, and then years later, his greatest wrestler in the world, and the MMA champion. And just seeing these hardships, when you're around people with these hardships, and then what they achieve in life, it's, to me, it's the most rewarding thing to be around people like this, and we all share our stories, and it just helps everybody think like, "Wow, I haven't done much in this life. I know I can do a lot more now because of the people who are around and the example they've set."
I love that. I'll make sure to include links to the various shows in the show notes. That's
Um,
all. What question haven't I asked you that you'd like to answer?
well, Michael, you're so good at what you do. I'm honored to be back on your show. Right now, I think the most important project I'm doing now, and I'm going to talk more about it in probably the next couple of months, is, I'm 68 years old now, and I was on a trail run a few months ago, and I was thinking, you've got to adjust your goals and you've got to adjust your life as you go on. And I started talking about this when we first started talking in this interview, but we are who we are because of our parents' influence, in my case, the greatest generation, and then everything that's happened to us in our generation. And then now look how soft we've become. And I'm doing a lot of research on this. I'm doing a project on that and the antidote for that. And that's, to me, it's, if I could leave anything to my kids or grandkids, that's the lessons I want to leave for them. And because I think the legacy are not that you have to be anybody known or unknown or famous or not famous, it could be anybody. I think it's important that you and me, everybody, we've learned all these lessons in life. Let's package them up, just take the good and what can we share with others that might help them. And that's the project I'm working on now. And that's to me, is the only thing really important that I'm doing right now.
I'd love to have you back when you're in a place to talk more about that.
Well, thanks, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right. So, Don, obviously, want to encourage people to buy your book, The Navy SEAL Playbook. You've written many other books, fiction and nonfiction. Where can people learn more about what you offer, your teachings, your books, things like that?
Well, I think when you and I last spoke, I think I was just on book number 4, and that's book number 24. So I've been busy writing
You have indeed.
that and the TV shows, but they're all on my website, which is usfrogman with 2 N's.com. Yeah, it's just an enjoyable thing to do. Um, I like to have some macro goal in a project, and these books give me that as a purpose.
That's awesome. I'll make sure to include your website on the show notes. It's been great to catch back up with you.
Thanks, Michael. It's a pleasure. It's a real pleasure to see you again and talk to you again.
Yeah, and definitely look forward to having you back to talk about the generation. I don't know what you call the project, but whatever you call the project when it's ready.
Calling it My Generation. So there's a little rock and roll theme to it, but I'm going to send it to you when I'm finished it.
I would love to take a look at it for sure. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Michael. Take care. Thanks.